What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Brandon's Face. It's the podcast about a playlist. I'm Jonathan Beardsley.
And I am Brandon May.
We hope you're all doing well. The time has come for the finale in our Album of the Year for 2024 series. And today we are going to be talking about all things metal, an episode I know you and I have both been looking forward to this year, every year, all year. It's one of our favorite genres. It's one of the ones we kind of bonded over and became friends over. And this year has provided just a lot of good or bad, whether you liked it or not, just a lot of fun material to break down, and I am excited to go through everything with you. We Again, this is one of those genres like vaguely rock and indie like we did last week, where you really can't talk about the genre as a whole because it's made up of so many subgenres. But you always have your finger on the pulse of what the trend is. What was that metal trend of 2024, Brandon?
Hardcore. Well,
Hardcore.
metalcore.
And is
Hardcore and
this
metalcore.
And do you think this is the direction we're going to continue to keep going?
No, I don't. The metal world is interesting, but it's in such a great place right now.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure now that Blood Incantation actually charted on the Billboard
Yeah.
along with Knocked Loose.
Yeah.
And I believe a Defeated Sanity record, which I'm not even sure if we reviewed, also charted this year. So we've got a wide variety of sounds just in those three or four records that made it to the Billboard charts. Like that's gigantic, you know?
That's huge. And I think it's notable this year compared to at least the past few in respect to the fact that our conversation in the last few years around metal is metal even metal anymore? Because alternative metal, which I'm a fan of some of that stuff, Bad Omens, Sleep Token, Bring Me the Horizon, all of that stuff became the only metal that charted. So to have actual metal or hardcore influenced metal or whatever that is be a new form of it that's actually breaking through to the mainstream. I know some metalheads are going to roll their eyes at that, but that's for the good of the genre. You know, a rising tide raises all ships. I get that that analogy is flawed in some ways, but I do think that that's true this year. I think the popularity of artists like Knocked Loose and Poppy has elevated other artists in their orbit. I don't think that's unfair to say.
No, I don't. I mean, Knocked Loose getting that Jimmy Kimmel gig was huge for them. And I think that the catalyst for them getting that Jimmy Kimmel gig was them opening for Slipknot and becoming more mainstream viable. Because, like it or not, purists, but Slipknot is one of the most gigantic bands on the planet. Like they
Yes.
still are. I'm pretty sure they have similar monthly listeners than as like Iron Maiden, and that is
Hmm.
huge. Like it's huge, you know. And so Knocked Loose opening up for them became a catalyst for them entering the mainstream, and then they dropped an album at the exact right time that just catapulted them to hopefully unforeseen success. And Poppy being on that record also helped her catapult herself into a more mainstream view, even though her trajectory has been a little weird throughout her career, which is
Sure, yeah.
yeah,
She's
that's
more
that.
in that alt metal world, but I would consider her album this year her most straightforward metalcore album to date.
Yeah. And you know, the popularity of metalcore being it's one of those things where like the hardcore scene is like a youth scene, and then the
Mhm.
metalcore scene are like semi grown up hardcore kids, and then eventually you get to the people who like all of the old school thrash metal and stuff like that, because
Yep.
that's what happens when you age, you know?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that part's inevitable. You're going to go through the trends as you age, no matter what. And I think that not to go too far back, but to what you were just saying about Knocked Loose opening up for Slipknot, do you kind of think of that as like the metal version of like Kendrick opening for Dre and Snoop back in the day? Is this like the torch passing for mainstream metal in that regard?
You know, we'll see. I think yes and no. I think that Snoop and Dre, that specific analogy might not be the best, only because Snoop and Dre aren't going to have to continue to struggle to make money because Snoop,
True.
you know, makes
Very
500
true.
grand a day hosting the Olympics.
It's easy to
That's who
pass
he.
the torch
That's who he
when
is.
you're
Yeah,
comfortable. Yeah.
exactly. And while Corey Taylor is probably far more comfortable than I am, uh, I don't think he's ever going to stop. You know.
I don't
Um,
think he will either. I do think Corey Taylor, or he's rich as fuck, but I don't. He does
yeah.
not need to keep doing this. But I do think that being a musician is not quite the same. I get that, especially in the metal world. But man, this year has just been so crazy, and it's hard to tell where we started going this direction. Like I feel like a year or two ago when it was like Lorna Shore headlines or not headlines but gets a festival spot and all these people turn up for that type of music at a festival that's usually dominated by mainstream pop of the time was like an indicator, but there's been all these little indicators along the way that have led to where we are now. And man, I am this has probably been my favorite year of metal since we've started doing this podcast. So I want to just dive in because it's the album we've been talking about. Knocked Loose is my album of the year. I don't think there was any hiding this. There was a few really strong contenders that I'm equally as excited to talk about. But this is the album I'm going to remember from this genre, from this year, maybe from this like half decade. I think that you were saying, time and place with them and Poppy, and I do think that that's true. But it's also the right album. It's so tight, it's succinct, it is just so fucking heavy. Like, there's a lot of times where you're like, oh, that mainstream metal band, they're kind of poppy. This album is fucking heavy, dude. And every time I run it back, it still hits. It's just got that we've talked about it a lot these last few weeks, but that sound, it just like they've developed into their own thing. Right place, right time, right album. I'm a big fan of everything they're doing right now, and without a question, Knocked Loose is my metal album of the year for 2024. But I'm dying to know what yours is.
Well, let's talk about a little bit more about Knocked Loose,
Yeah.
because we've been talking about it, and I'll get to mine. But I gave this a 9 when it dropped.
Hmm.
I actually don't even think that it's like their best album as the band, but it being a 9 and not even being their best album says so much about the band. They have the honestly, man, they're right on track to continue fucking crushing things, and
Yeah.
I'm happy for them, man. And I had even forgotten that Knocked Loose had fucking played Coachella. Like that's huge for them, and
Yeah.
that probably helped set them up to hit that trajectory that they did in 2024, late 2023, early
The
2024, and
Metal Chapel Room.
yeah, man, I love them for that. And seeing people stage dive in the Sedora tent on stream with a pit going, like an actual karate hardcore pit going at Coachella was something to
Doesn't happen
something
every
to
day.
look at. Yeah, something to look at. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, this I and to your credit, also you said we get a lot of bands like, and I'll call them out: Bad Omens, Parkway Drive, Motionless in White, Bring Me the Horizon, right? All these metalcore bands that started far heavier than they are now. They go soft in order to gain more fans. Knocked Loose somehow did not soften their sound even a little bit.
Nope.
And they just continued to dominate. And there's something to be said for that. Whether or not they do that in the future is still a coin toss. It's 50-50 to me, but we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. I don't see them doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't quite see them doing that either. I think that they're just on a rocket ship right now. I think it could fizzle at some point or people their immediate infatuation with this type of music might fizzle, but I do think that they're here to stay. And I think we're going to get many more albums of this quality, if not better. Like you said, it's arguably not even their best album. So for it to be getting the accolades it is, says so much about their discography at this point. But enough about Knocked Loose, Brandon. What's your metal album of the year?
John, do you have any idea how agonizing this is? This was like you said, one of the better years in metal that we've had in
Yeah.
a long fucking time. I
Hmm.
gave two tens out this year. I don't give tens in metal like a lot. I think the last 10 in metal I gave was in 2021 for Between the Buried and Me's Colors
Yeah.
2. Uh, this was honestly agonizing, but I had to go with what my heart said. And even as I have had the taste of the heavier stuff, as I've grown and matured, the softer side of me has kind of become more accustomed with some of the lighter stuff. There's almost no screams on this album. There's almost no harsh vocals, but it's got to be Wheel's charismatic leaders. It
Such a Brandon
still is a
pick.
10. It is still a 10. I saw them live this year. They fucking crushed it. They have done they, they've won over a lot of people who didn't who really just thought they were kind of a Tool clone, which they to me never have really have been. This and it's funny, you know, in 2021 I remember even like prior to us starting the podcast, John, I had sent you their album. I think it was Resident Human,
Yeah.
and I was like, you got to fucking listen to this. Like, you need to listen to the whole thing.
Mhm.
And that album was insane. This one is, it's a perfect album. My second is also a perfect album, and it really, really was agonizing. But I mean, it's Wheel, Charismatic Leaders. It's a beautiful album filled with perfect sequencing, filled with not a lot of noodling, but just the right amount. The
Sure.
everybody in the band does their thing exactly the way that they should be doing it, and they do it in such a unique way. Everything is tuned perfectly. Dude's voice is insane. I love this album. This is it.
I love that that's your pick because I feel like your reputation, at least as it proceeds in our personal circle, is that of the heaviest. And like you said, metal is not just screaming. This is a form of metal. I was not as high on this album as you, like you said. You gave it a 10. I did not. I was one of the ones you just subtextually called out with the Tool stuff. I was saying that all in the lead up. I do believe a lot of that subsided by the time I actually listened to the album in full. I was able to appreciate it as their own thing a lot more. But yes, I guilty as charged when it comes to the accusations
I
that
wasn't
it was too
specifically
Tool
calling you out.
adjacent. Yeah, you were, but that's fine. No,
I would tell you.
no, man. That's a great pick. But so you're saying this year, I have kind of a 1 through 5, 1 through 6. But you're saying this year for metal, you have a 1A, 1B.
I do, yes.
So what's your 1B?
The complete opposite side of the spectrum. It's
Yeah,
Ingurgitating Oblivion's
God
Ontology
damn
of
it.
Not.
The heaviest album, arguably, this year.
I mean, look, man, if we could take the dichotomous route, but the reality is that both of these albums blew me the fuck away. I left with my hair sticking up on the back of my neck on both of these records on first listen, and that says way more than a lot of things. And you know, we're going to talk about a lot of albums tonight, but those are definitely my 1A, 1B, and it was very close. I'm not going to lie.
I love how like this is probably the genre that alongside like dance music that we've, kind of bonded over the most. And it's also the one we're just the most different in. I don't have either of these albums even on my list, but I had a feeling they'd both be creeping up on yours based on when I was going through our scores this year. This album is just so much. It is every song is a
It doesn't stop.
three-part song. They're all like 5 to 6 to 10 plus minutes, whatever it is. I don't think there's any 10-minute songs on there. It varies. There's some like theatrics, there's some instrumental sections, there's some
Some
heavy
jazz,
sections, some jazz. It is so fucking much. It didn't land for me, but I didn't revisit Wheel this week. I did circle back to a few of these songs, and it's still a whole lot, but man, it is done. It takes such like an insane level of talent to pull off an album like that. So I respect it on those terms alone.
I think it is one of those albums that you hear, and we're going to talk about it later in the episode, but
Yeah.
it came out, I believe, on the same day or maybe the week after or the week prior as Blood Incantation's album, Absolute Everywhere. And
Mhm.
everybody was talking about how the softer sections really complemented it. And I kept going back to this album. Literally everybody on Reddit, on Rate Your Music, on fucking Bandcamp, everybody slept on this one because for the reason that they're just, I guess, not so popular or they are too challenging. But this one challenged me, bro. Being able to pay
Yeah.
attention to this album is insane. Like actually, it actually challenged me. And the fact that it's challenging and good, like it's not Captain Beefheart challenging, but it's challenging in the fact that we do have like legitimate jazz breakdowns. We do have like
Yeah.
legitimate like legitimate classical moments of like actual harmonious gorgeousness. And then it crushes your all of every single one of your bones as you listen to it. It's one of those albums, man. And I couldn't I still listen to this album every week.
Of course you do. I would expect no less from you. Man, this is just one of those albums, like you said. It is so bone-crushingly intense and then just jarringly switches gears on a whim to something else completely different, but equally as mind-blowing. It's insane, man. And I think people should definitely check it out. Whether or not they end up enjoying it as much as you is a whole other question, but they deserve to be checked out at the very least, for sure.
100%.
All right, man. My picks are all gonna feel so normie compared to yours, I feel like, but I'm gonna go into them, man. My second one is one that crept up really late. It's Counterparts, this EP, Heaven Let Them Die. Good Lord, man. I did not know who this band was before this year. I think I'd heard the vocalist on like a Hawthorne Heights song a few years ago. They kind of came out of nowhere. This album, EP, whatever the hell it is. At first, I ran the first song back a few times. I was like, man, this is so fucking good. I think A Martyr Left Alive is the name of that song. And
It
I was
is.
just like, there's no way that this whole EP is going to carry this type of quality. And every time I listen to it, man, I never even think about skipping a second of it. It is so well done. It feels just everything within my taste of metal. It's just hitting all those notes for me. I fucking love this one. I can't wait to see what's next. I know they've already put out, I think, a full-length album like a year or two ago. I'm definitely hoping for a new one in the next year or so, but this will keep me held over for quite a while, man. Did this end up making your list anywhere like top 10, top 20?
Um, no, but it's not a normie take. I actually think that Counterparts is one of the better metalcore bands of today, and the fact that they didn't let up after like I actually remember talking to you about this EP and being like, okay, like you just said, the first track was a banger. Wait, the second track's a banger too. Wait, they're all
Yep.
bangers? Like
Yep.
it's one of those where you kind of like have to run it back because you're so blown away by every moment of the record. And it is classic metalcore too. It's
Yeah.
not 90s metalcore purists, but it is early 2000s kind of MySpace metalcore worship with a modern twist to it, which
Hmm.
is maybe why you resonate with it so much because that is uh it- some of the better metalcore to ever release ever. So
I agree.
it's a good EP, bro. It's a really good EP. Great pick.
What's your next pick?
My next pick is going to have to be Job for a Cowboy Moon Healer.
Yep. Uh,
Yeah,
Unquestionable. Had to be on the list.
had to be, man. We got this one pretty early in the year.
We did.
And this one it was 10 years in the making. Maybe longer, maybe 9 years. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This album is insane. It is it is far from their Doom EP signature deathcore style, which, as an aside, Job for a Cowboy perfected deathcore and then said, "Okay, I'm done with this." You know, cue the meme of Sid say or to Andy saying, "I don't want to play with you anymore," because they've crushed the technical and melodic
Yeah.
death metal aspect of their sound, and they just continue to get better. Sun Eater was fantastic, and I was apprehensive for Moon Healer. I had no idea where they were going, and I'm so glad that they continued with that Sun Eater sound because they absolutely just honed it in on this release. The bass tone, the bass playing, the vocals, the guitar work, both on the technical side of things and on the rhythm side of things, and of course the drumming are all incredible. I gave it a 9 when it released and we reviewed
Mhm.
it. I think it might be a 9.5. Like it's so close to being perfect. It's just right there on the cusp, you know? Did this one land for you?
Yes, dude. It's in my top 15 for sure, man. And it was in my top like five until maybe later this year when I just kind of reassessed everything at once. But this
Valid.
was, like you said, 10 years in the making, man. It's a miracle that they even got back together to put this together for us. It's an even bigger miracle that it came out just as great as it is. Like you said, a lot of people have gotten mad at them for not just running through the motions they perfected decades ago. But why the fuck do that when you're still challenging yourself as an artist with albums like this, man? This might be their most technical. It's still just as brutal. It's fucking incredible, man. I thought that this was going to be my metal album of the year when it came out. It was that just immediately captivating to me. I think they crushed it, man. Definitely in the conversation.
Totally, totally agree.
My next
What
one, did you have something else to say?
I was going to ask you what your next one was, sir.
Oh man, it's Peeling Flesh, the G code. You introduced
Yes.
this one to me and you made a big mistake by
Yes.
doing that. This album just fucking rocks, man. Like, and I guess it's kind of, borrows a little bit of the squealy squealy from the old deathcore days, but in such a way that I have never heard before. I've heard, rap and metal and these types of things fused before, post rock with metal, which will be a little bit later in my list. But man, this fucking album just blew me away. The aesthetics right away. I'm like, fucking lowrider with gore font and gold. What the hell am I looking at? I hit
Yes.
play on it. The opening drum fill on that album, I was like, this is fucking insane. Goes into that second song and you get these like West Coast synths over these blast beats. The dude doing like post verses with squeals. This probably should be my 1B. Like I fucking love it that much. It is that good. I know they were selling out some big shows upon its release, as they fucking should. I love this album, man. I thank you so much for introducing them to me. They put out a split later with Brains Outward, I think, and just two more bangers of tracks. This is one of my favorite metal groups right now, for sure. Did this one land for you?
It's not in my top 5, but it is in my top 10.
Good.
John, I cannot tell you how I love that this is in your top 5. I was listening to this on the way home
Of course.
today. Like it's so good. You get all of it. And
Yeah.
I love bands that don't take themselves too seriously, and we're going to talk about another album that is probably closer to an honorable mention for me, but it's very good. That does kind of this same style, and
I
I'm
think it's my
so
next album.
glad. It might be. I'm so glad that you love this one so much that it actually hit your top. What is it? Top three, top two, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I'm
it's top five
I'm
for sure.
I'm ecstatic. I'm over the moon right now, John.
It's a great album, man. What's your next pick?
I think I have to go with Blood Incantations
Yeah.
Absolute Everywhere. It
Yep.
is it's a great album. There's no denying it. I cannot tell you how much I hate how much hype this got and how much people were talking about it. It is Rate Your Music's number one
Insane.
metal
Yeah.
album of the year.
Yes.
And I hate how much mainstream attention they got because it's going to do one of two things. It's going to go to their head and they're going to do something that they shouldn't do, or two, it's going to do nothing for them, which I prefer,
Hmm.
and they're going to continue to do whatever the fuck they want because that is currently being shown that that's what they're going to do.
Yep.
In 2019, they had my favorite album of the year with Hidden History of the Human Race. Insane metal album. I remember being pretty disappointed with their ambient album only because it was a bad ambient album. But this one blew me the fuck away, man. Those prog rock moments that just are so reminiscent of the Yes and the Pink Floyd and the Camel era of the 1970s
Yeah.
that that I also love because I'm apparently that fucking guy. And yeah, this is definitely going to be in my top 5 Blood Incantations Absolute Everywhere. Did this one chart for you?
Top 20 for sure. I think that what really makes this one click is the whole tablet formatting of it for
Yeah, the
such like a
sequence.
expansive prog rock album that's really not that expansive. It's two like 20-minute-ish segments totaling about 45 minutes. It's really digestible for the type of album it is, and I feel like that's part of why it's transcending. You can get all of these things that you normally have to like invest so much time into these types of artists to be rewarded. You're like, I finally made it to the part of this prog rock song I like 8 minutes in. That this has some of that, but they get there so fast and they do it in a way that's so immediately fun to listen to, at least in my opinion, that it's undeniable. I think that the reception to it from the mainstream and from everyone else at times is like, oh man, why are you guys so selective about what albums you do this to and what was it about this
Painstaking.
one? But this one, I get it. I fucking get it, man. And I think that from having some friends that have seen their most recent live tour, I think that what they're doing live is also helping their case for just being not just a must listen to band, but a must see band. This is it is high art for prog rock, man. They nailed the aesthetics of it. They nailed the presentation, the formatting, the packaging. I think they deserve the credit for it. It's not quite top 10 for me, but I think it's an undeniable like best metal album of 2024 in terms of just objective taste in metal for
For
sure.
sure.
My next
Absolutely. What's
one.
your next one?
I it's Orbital Gate, Astral Scavenger,
Yes,
man.
that's the album.
I knew it. I knew it was gonna be. The second you were saying some words there, I was like, oh, this sounds like my taste. Yeah, and this is unlike the Job for a Cowboy one. I did not think this would be like my metal album of the year or in the conversation when it came out. I was like, that was really fun. And then like the itch just doesn't go away. Like you're like, I want to listen to that again. I kind of want to listen to that again. That's really fun. Sludgegate, I think, was on my like Spotify Wrapped in my like top 100, man. There's and you know me, this is not normal for me. This is
Nope.
not the type of pick I would normally have in my list at all, let alone top five. But here we are, man. Peeling Flesh and Orbital Gate in 2024 slightly changed who I am in my taste in metal. This is just, it's, man, I hate to sound like a Pitchfork article. It's reminding me how fun metal can be, Brandon. But these just did it for me. I love this album. What about you? You said this one was on your list somewhere down the line. So what, like top 10, lower top 10,
Yeah,
top
it's
15?
top 10, top 15. Call it what you want, man. This album is so much. I also listened to this today. I woke up and I was like, you know what? It's a fucking Orbital Gate kind of day. It's metal review. It's metal album of the year day.
It
I'm gonna
is. It
throw on
is.
Orbital fucking Gate. And
Yes.
yeah, man, just that's just I can't I also didn't ever stop listening to this album after it dropped today. I actually recently learned that there was an album from this guy. This is a solo project, by the way, everybody.
Yes.
That's listening. This is insane that it's a solo project. But he also has another solo project called Resuscitate that is a more serious thing. I
Interesting.
haven't quite given it a chance yet. He calls himself Resuscitate on that one, prog death, tech death
Okay.
sort of thing. Good stuff.
I'm sure we'll
But
check it out.
but this album is just the perfect blend of I don't give a fuck and like actual talent. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's so fun when an artist can say I'm good at this, but also I don't really care. So I'm gonna do what I want to do. Shout out to that sample that is a pretend Burger King commercial. Because I thought for a second, I was like, wait, did I pay my Spotify bill or something? So I'm like, get a double
Getting
cheeseburger for
ads?
129 or get a human child for just a buck 49. Just insane. Thank you. Thank you, Orbital Gate.
Yes, dude. Easily one of my favorites. What's your next one?
Uh, I mean, you probably could guess it. It's Cosmic Putrefaction, Emerald Fires atop
Should
the
have
Farewell
known.
Mountain.
Yep. A
This
banger.
is a banger all the way through. This is a beautiful representation of where I actually think that serious death metal is going. Also a solo project, probably with like a handful of people on the album. I haven't quite looked at the credits, but This album also has a lot of the things that I like in Ingurgitating Oblivion, but not what's the word? Jarring?
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
right. Uh Great album, technical, beautiful, classical, amazing, a little bit of prog here and there, a couple of longer tracks to kind of draw everything out. Loved it. Did this one chart for you?
It didn't. It was only on my favorite album artworks of the year list. I did revisit it. I threw a song from it on the playlist this week, which was my standout when it dropped, Swirling Madness, a
Great
fucking
track.
jam of all jams, man.
Gigantic song. Yeah.
It's it's a great album, top 25 maybe for sure. I definitely did not write that many down, but it's a great album. I had a really fun time with it. Cosmic Putrefaction, we've covered, I believe, two albums of his so far, and both
Yep.
of them have just been absolute bangers. This one's no different, man. And maybe it's the seriousness that you're talking about. I was in a very not serious mood a lot of the time this year, and I feel like my taste in metal very much reflects that, at least with Peeling Flesh and Orbital Gate. This was maybe one of my more favorites on the more serious side, once I'm
Good.
realizing that's kind of a thing.
Good shit. No, you're allowed to like whatever you want, man. And I'm glad that honestly metal should be fun. And as the pretentious nerd in me wants a lot of metal to be serious because that's I guess who I am. It's totally valid want something silly, which is peeling flesh and orbital gate, but it's not only silly, it's also those were also some of the heavier albums this year.
They were. My next one is not one of my more silly picks, but it is one that just surprised the hell out of me. I think Harriet is the way you pronounce this band, Devoured
All
by the Mouth of
right.
Hell.
All
We
right.
missed this one when it dropped. I had to like circle back to throw it on the playlist after I found it because I was like, I fucking love this. Really, like, there's nothing like that stood out to me above any of the other albums, which is why it didn't end up charting slightly higher. But every time I listen to this one, it's so fucking good, man. I just think everything they're doing is working. Love the guitar tone, love the breakdowns. I just love the dynamic range of the vocals and all of it. Just all came together for me. I don't think this one was going to be charting for you, but I had to give it some love, man, because I really did enjoy it that much.
Yeah, it's got a lot of black metal influence in it, which I really enjoyed. I like this one. I think I gave it a 7. I actually revisited it this week though, because you threw one of these tracks on the playlist and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I haven't gone back to this album. And so I went back to it and I actually would probably if I had to right now, I'd probably give it more of an 8 than a 7.
Yeah.
It's a really good one, man.
What's your next one?
My next one is Darkest Hour Perpetual Terminal.
Yes. This came
Band
out like same time as Job for a Cowboy, right?
yeah, I think same week.
Yeah.
I saw this band this year. They're incredible live. I saw them again. I saw them in 2014 and then 10 years later at the same festival, at the same venue, which is tight. Yeah, this album's fucking great. It has a couple of softer moments, but I almost kind of like wanted that from Darkest Hour. I didn't want them to stay in the thrashy kind of like the thrashy mellow death kind of thing that they've always done. I wanted them to kind of branch out a little bit, and I'm glad that they did because it really worked for them. Mausoleum being one of the slower and softer tracks on the album still hits hard when you put it all together, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, dude. Fucking slams, dude. Darkest Hour this year was just like Job for a Cowboy in the sense that when those two albums came out, I was like, well, there it is. There's the
Yeah,
bar
right?
for the year. They both came out so early and were both of such high quality. I think I gave them both. I remember giving Job for a Cowboy like an 8.59. Darkest Hour, I think I had in a similar range, but I preferred the Job for a Cowboy one slightly more at the time.
Yep.
I think they've leveled out in terms of the horse race for me. I listened to both of these equally. I love them both for what they are, and I think that it was so fun to get two albums like this, like side by side, that reflect two different sides of our metal taste, and we had both of them to enjoy all year, man. I think Darkest Hour knocked it out of the fucking park with this one. The title track on it is just a banger every time it comes on. This is a
Oh
great
yeah.
album, man. I knew it was
Societal
going to be in
Bile,
your top
bro.
10. So good, dude.
So
So
good.
fucking good.
That song comes on and I need to like headbang. Like I need to headbang,
And
you know?
need is the key word.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Like your body, my body does it by itself. My brain has very little to do with it.
My next pick is Poppy, Negative Spaces. I get
That's
that
right.
this one's a little more core than the rest, but I think that we'll kind of get into like the MVPs of the year, but Poppy in 2024 was putting up some numbers, like and
Real.
I think that this album is great. When New Way Out came out as the first single, I was like, that's a winner. There we'll see if that this is the best the album has to offer. Next single came out, They're All Around Us. Heavier, even better, man. From there, the singles got a little more varied, but everything that kept coming out, I was like, oh God, man, she's not missing on these, at least for me. And I've become just such a fan of her overall sound. I think that it's easy to make the meme of like, oh, gee, it's a poppy song. I know what the guitars are going to sound like or the scream, which sure you do, fuck you, but like that, it still rules, man. And I think that this album is just like all of those things coming together in a way that I enjoy so much. What about you? Did this one chart for you?
So no, but I need to just there's so many things that you just said, John. Number one, you're allowed to like metalcore. You're allowed to like soft metalcore. Everybody is allowed to like cores and still consider themselves metalheads. I hate that there's so much gatekeeping. And I understand that there's
You're
some
right.
gatekeeping that like needs to happen in order to keep scenes the way that they are, but scenes need to be able to expand to open up. I mean, I'm a fan of Ingurgitating Oblivion. I'm also a gigantic fan of Knocked Loose and Poppy, and there's no fucking way that I'm going to stop somebody who's a fan of Bad Omens from being around
Yep.
me because they're a fan of Bad Omens. It's so weird. And then number two, Poppy and Darkest Hour were at the same festival that I went to this year. Yay!
Sophie's choice.
Except for I had to choose between them. I chose Darkest Hour because I really wanted to pit. But and honestly, neither choice would have been the wrong choice, but you know how I be.
I
This
do.
album is amazing. Like it really is. Her voice is awesome and it's really cool that somebody who kind of started as like more of a pop girl is putting out heavy music and exposing because I actually saw there's the Pophead subreddit. This album was posted to that subreddit because of her interesting storied history with music as a whole, let alone heavy music. And seeing it posted there and having a bunch of people who, charted Chapel Roan talking about Poppy was amazing.
Yes, I we need more of that. Honestly, we need these artists.
100%.
We need more than these fans working together. We need these artists working together. I want to hear the Poppy remix of Pink Pony Club tomorrow.
Let me tell you something. If Blood Incantation put out that Peeling Flesh album or featured on it, the Peeling Flesh album would have gone an insane way because the only reason it hasn't charted is because people haven't heard it.
Exactly. Yeah, people need sadly sometimes to be told what to listen to, which fucking sucks. I think most people are smart enough to make the musical decisions for themselves, but as it relates to bands like that, some of them just don't get given the same chances as others. So it is cool that we have artists like this that kind of catch everyone's attention.
Yep.
All right, man. We've each given our album of the year and like our top fives or so, so we can kind of broaden it to just other albums we really enjoyed and want to give a quick shout out to. I have easily a handful, probably more here. I'll just start going. You can go offset with me, man. 200 Stab Wounds. We haven't said their name yet on this
Yes.
podcast.
Yes.
Manual Manic Procedures. This one is just a fucking banger. Definitely deserves a shout out.
100%. Yeah, I think broadening it would be great now because 200 Stab Wounds put out a fantastic album this year. Riff Salad is, I believe, what I called it in my review.
Yeah.
And that's because it is that, and it is also extremely breakdown heavy and
Yeah.
more on the dying fetus breakdown side
Hmm.
than the I don't know who else is famous for their breakdowns on Earth, more than but
Sure.
it's so much fun to listen to. It is a hardcore adjacent death metal album, which is so hot right now, and good for them.
What's your next pick?
Man, I actually wanted to shout out a band that and an album that didn't quite resonate with you as much, and I first, the life of me can't understand why. I listened to it again yesterday, and I was like, God, this album's fucking good. Swelling Repulsion's album, Fatally
Hmm.
Misguided. It has this kind of psychedelic, kind of proggy, but like mainly tech death feel to it. Extremely small band. It was mixed terribly, but I kind of like that there's a
Ah,
lot
yeah.
of rawness to it. Yeah, see, you remember now.
Yes, yes.
I loved this album, man.
I am sorry that I did not. I kind of forgot entirely about it until you brought up the mix note, and it all came back to me
Right.
immediately. I'm not above being wrong at times, man. I think that you and I are just trying to cover all things that both of our tastes touch on. So please feel free to fire off anything I did not agree with.
Oh, I
Chat
will.
pile. Cool World. I think that this one is such a weird metal album, but damn it if I don't enjoy it every time it comes on. I, I I don't really know what else to say about it. Just had to give it a shout out, man.
Oh, hey, we agree on this one. It didn't quite hit my top five, nor really, I didn't even really rank it, but God, this is fun. It is, well, not fun. It's actually kind of depressing, but it's a great album, man.
Yeah, it is. What's your next shout out?
Let's go ahead and shout out Dune, Void Kind. I actually think you liked this one more
I
than you
did. Yeah.
didn't. This one is great. It is harsh, soft prog, which is kind of in this weird limbo where if you like prog, you pretty much only like either harsh or soft vocals. But this one kind of had a fantastic mix of both, and they killed it on this one, man. It would be remiss of us to not mention it this episode.
I agree. That one I did enjoy more than not. It didn't quite crack my top 20, but it's a great album.
Right.
Uh, Another album I really enjoyed, Nails Every Bridge Burning. Another one
Yes.
that just it's hard to have words for it. You just got to listen to it. This one just fucking rips. I saw like a guy the other day wearing a shirt for this album and I was like, is that a Nails shirt? And he kind of gave me the nod. We both gave each other like the silent nod, you know? Uh
Love
it,
seeing metalheads in public.
God damn it, it's the best. Glorious Beard. This album fucking rules, dude. They were not on my radar before this year. There's so many bands that are new to my world of metal, and this is one that I am just new to, but so excited about, man. This album is so good. Give Me the Painkillers, one of the best metal songs all year, dude. This one fucking
So
rules.
good. So
What's your
good.
next one?
Honestly, I'm surprised that this one didn't hit your top five, if I'm being honest. I think I remember you really liking it, and I remember really liking it, but that isn't of itself a commentary about how fucking insane of a year that we've had in metal. Like, I'm not even done talking about my eight and a halves. You know what I mean? Like, like, god damn, man. All right. My next one is probably gonna have to be Nile, The Underworld Awaits.
Yep, yep. Dude,
Just
and
just
we've
an
had some
insane
legends
album.
this year. Yeah.
Right. I mean, okay, well, let's open that up for a second because that
Yeah.
conversation needs to be had. We've had legends drop this year. Nile, fucking Judas Priest dropped this year.
Hmm.
Bring Me the Horizon dropped this year. Fucking Opeth dropped this year. We haven't even really talked about any of them,
No?
which is insane, bro. Like that's crazy to me how good of a year we've had.
Dude, it's been nonstop. It's been so hard to keep up with. Like that's just like the way that it's been. Unfortunately, we cannot remember everything, kind of a fault of the way we live. But
Right.
man, this is just overwhelming in the best way possible. Niall, great pick, man. Uh,
Tech death at its best, man, especially when it's Egyptian themed.
can,
If you can throw the Mummy on and use a metal album as a soundtrack, that is an A plus.
God damn it. Now I gotta go watch The Mummy after this. Thanks, Brandon. Uh, we might have talked about one of these bands last week. For some reason I'm thinking we did, but can we just like give a shout out to the MySpace metalcore people keeping that shit alive? See You Space Cowboy, Cinema, Your Ghost in Glass. I get that not all of these are exactly metal, but man, this those artists right there are keeping a genre alive that needs to be not just talked about, but listened to. That See You Space Cowboy album had some ferocious breakdowns on it. I really enjoyed just all of the way that album was put together. I've heard their name floating around the past few years, and for some reason I always thought it was like kind of like blood on the dance floor adjacent. Like, you don't
Right.
really want to listen to that. I was wrong, man. I really, really, really like their music, and I think that this album was fantastic. What about you? Did you have any? I know you're a big fan of like your Ghost in Glass. What was kind of like your MySpace metal album this year?
I mean, if I it would be a tie between See You Say Space Cowboy and Your Ghost in Glass because those, like you said, are the ones that are kind of carrying the torch for that early to mid 2000s metalcore sound. Um, it's crazy when you think back, right? I think in 2005, I was a freshman in high school, and just like kind of like becoming familiar with all of the metalcore in the world. I had like kind of explored death metal and Slipknot a little bit,
Hmm.
but like the array of like classic albums we were around in that time, and like we all kind of knew that they were classic, right?
Yep.
But we didn't have the words nor the experience to say it at that moment, you know what I mean? And so and so these bands, See You Space Cowboy and Your Ghost in Glass, are kind of carrying the torch for that sound that should have never died off. See You Space
Agree.
Cowboys album Coup de Grace is insane, and they got a lot of flowers for it when it came out, which is awesome. Your Ghost in Glass, a little bit more underground, but still got quite a bit of love,
Hmm.
and they deserved it.
At least on this podcast. Went platinum over here.
Right.
All right, man. I have, I guess, two more that I gotta shout out here. Thou, Umbilical. This
There it
album is
is.
just filthy. Fucking filthy. Saw it at the record store the other day. Considered buying it, probably should have. This album is just so fucking good, man. Did you revisit it at all this week?
Oh yeah, I listened to it yesterday. I think for the third time this week because it's insane. It's a really good album. Didn't quite beat out because honestly, I've seen this on hundreds of people's lists, and it's a great record. Don't get me wrong, but there were so many albums that just hit my heart a little better, you know.
Yep.
But this album's great, bro. I'm glad you mentioned it because it needed
What,
to be.
what's your next one?
I've got like four more we like have to talk about, so
Yeah,
bear
let's
with
go.
me. The next one that we're going to talk about is Party Cannon. Injuries are inevitable.
I was hoping you'd get there. Such a fun slam album, man.
Just absolutely insane. I love it. It's slamming, it's brutal, it's death metal, it's fun. It's all of those things. It's probably up there for one of the worst album covers of the year, but you gotta love them for it.
That was always going to be the case if you were following them up to it. Give me another one. What's your next one?
Let's go ahead with Zompantli beating the drums
Oh
of
dear
ancestral force.
God, what a fucking heavy ass album. Dear God. I forgot about that one until you just said the name. That one, that'll put some hair on your chest. That album will.
That'll put some hair on your ancestors' chests. Like,
Like their
my
bones grow.
God, this
Great one.
album fucking slaps, bro. This album is so. When somebody had asked on some Reddit post, like, what's the best, like, what happened to all the caveman death metal? I was like, oh, I've got something for this.
You
It's
have something
this.
for everything.
It's this one, bro. It's insane. Insane.
Um, I got one. It's a split EP. Synestia and Disembodied Tyrant, the Poetic Edda.
Yes.
Dear God, man. I This one is in that same level of just this is fucking heavy. Like as about as heavy as it gets at times, but it is so fucking good, man. This I had to give it a shout out. Not quite top 10, top 15, but definitely needs a shout out.
The orchestral elements in this are insane.
Yeah.
They really did the thing. You know, like Lorna Shore has done it, and a handful of other bands have done this sound. But I really think that this EP fucking nailed it. I think like Job for a Cowboy dropped Doom, and then never did deathcore again. I think deathcore can never really do symphonic orchestral deathcore ever again. Like the genre, like people need to. Everybody's working on orchestral deathcore albums. Maybe like don't like maybe weigh it up to this one because it's
Maybe don't.
in this one is insane, bro. It really hit. It really hit for me for sure.
Yeah. Same. Same. All right. What are your last two picks here?
Let's go with Siverus Maze Envy.
Ooh, great one.
Arguably one of the heavier albums of the year. There's been a lot of heavy albums, and there's a lot of different interpretations of heavy, but this one got has that like perfect blend of death and doom that in those tempos that are completely dichotomous, but creating a duality within those two genres is kind of an art form. I think that Ahab has done it right a handful of times, but I think that these guys did it on another level uh, with this one, Maze Envy.
Yeah, Sybaris one. I did revisit that one. The album artwork for it always catches my eye. The purple swirls and shit. It's
Right,
a
right, right.
really fun album. Like you said, arguably one of the heaviest ones this year. Great album. We'll definitely be following them. I could see them putting out an album that does end up cracking my end of year list, but just did not quite get there this year. Worthy of the shout out though, for sure. What's your other one?
Most definitely. All right, the last one I got to talk about is bipolar architectures metaphysicize.
Ooh,
We talked about this way earlier in the year. I
yeah.
when we were when when it was officially Metal Week, which was about 0.6 seconds after we stopped our Rock Album of the Year podcast. I immediately went to my Album of the Year metal playlist and was like, "What am I putting on first?" It was this one because it I needed to revisit it. I had revisited it like a couple of times throughout the year, but I remember loving it so much. I have the record in our record collection, and I needed to revisit it again. I gave it an 8 when it came out. It's probably closer to an 8.5. This kind of post metal mix with the death metal with how indie they are, yet how good this album sounds. All of that coming together and creating this album as the fruition of all of that, of all the as the fruits of all of that labor is insane to me.
Deep cut. Love that pick, man. Metaphysicize was the name of that album, I believe. Love
Yes,
that
sir.
that is in our collective record collection. Thank you.
uh,
All right, man. That does it for like our favorite metal albums of the year. What was your favorite go-to metal song this week, if you can narrow it down to one or two?
man, there's obviously a handful that really, really did it for me. But I think that's going to the song that's gonna beat everything out is probably going to be, let me see here. I really liked you actually put it on the playlist this week. No Way Out by Chat Pile is really good, but Swirling
Great song.
Madness Supernal
Yeah.
Ordeal by Cosmic Putrefaction was probably the when it came on, I turned it up. You know what I mean? Like I shuffled
Yep.
the playlist this week. When it came on, I turned that shit all the way up and it just fucking got it.
Yeah, Swirly Madness must listen to. Mine's Noctilus and Poppy, Suffocate, the song that is probably the most popular metal song of the year. I think it's popular for a reason. I think it is the best. It is just such a good jam, man. That last breakdown, the I Will Dig Until I Find the Fucking Root one, is probably my favorite
So
breakdown
good.
of the year. It's
So
so good,
good.
man. Favorite artist though, I am going to pivot. I'm going to say, like I was hinting at earlier, I don't know about favorite artist, but I do think Poppy's kind of the through line MVP. Not only did she put out a great album of her own, she also partially stole the show on a Knocked Loose album and had easily the best song on a Bad Omens album. That's three of the biggest metal projects of the year in which she's a part of or responsible for the best songs on it, man. I think that that has to be acknowledged. Poppy had a great year.
Uh, my favorite metal. Well, let me backtrack. Yes, Poppy had a fantastic year. Best song on a Bad Omens album is, I mean, not saying much for Bad Omens, but good for Poppy. I will say that Bad Omens put on a great show when I saw them. They actually did headline that festival.
Good, good.
Poppy being your favorite artist in metal this year is fucking valid, bro. That's a great pick. She has obviously had a fantastic year. Shout out to Poppy.
Who's yours?
My favorite metal album this or metal artist this year is also my favorite album. It's Wheel. These guys not only had to not only went on a supporting tour of the United States last year or the year prior, but they went on their very first headlining tour of the United States this year. They played all of the tiniest venues not ran by fucking Ticketmaster. They charged me no fees. They were at the fucking merch booth. They have somehow secured a spot on that Island Tool festival thing that they're doing, and I am just not only like proud of them, but I can only imagine how much work that was and how much money it was to get a visa from Finland to come here and work and tour and potentially even lose money, even though I bought a bunch of merch and hopefully everybody else did when they saw them. But that the the work that goes into what they did in 2024 is lends credence to the fact that they were probably one of the more hardworking bands of the year. So they're my favorite. Shout out to
Fuck yeah.
Will.
Love that pick for you. Shout out Wheel. All right, man. Who's your most anticipated for next year? Either announced, not announced. You can manifest it. What's your most anticipated metal album going forward?
That is tough. I have heard murmurs of a Between the Buried and Me project, which obviously has to get my pick for most anticipated. Um, Judging by the way the Coheed and Cambria album is shaping up to be,
Ooh, yeah.
that might be pretty heavy, bro.
Could be.
Stoked for that one, even though it's not, even though they've never put out a metal record. What about you?
Spirit Box.
There it
Their
is.
Tsunami Sea, I think it's coming out in March. I'm all in on that one, man. I think that they're gonna kill it. I think it's gonna be one of the best metal albums of the year. We just have to wait for it to come out. That's
Yep.
that's my pick right now. There's gonna be some deeper picks as we go along, but that's my pick as of now.
I want to shout out for a moment before we end the show all
Yeah.
of some of my favorite record labels this year. I recognize that indie labels put out a lot of money for bands to record shit and put shit out on records, and labels like Transcending Obscurity, even though they've never released a song before in their lives, they're signing bands that have never released anything, and they're giving them the same vinyl, t-shirt, sweatshirt, tote bag, merch treatment as all of the other ones. So shout out to Transcending Obscurity Records. Shout out to Willow
That.
Tip Records. They made it on my top two, I think,
Yup.
again this year. Shout out to 20 Bucks Spin, and shout out to New Standard Elite. All of these record labels are putting out some of the best metal you've ever heard. And if you've never heard of these labels that I'm talking about, go to Bandcamp, go check out their page, go buy some merch, go support the people that are supporting the bands that are more than likely near or around your scene.
Shout out Metal Blade. Metal Blade.
Metal Blade Records. There it is.
That's another one. Yeah, man, great year. I am very much looking forward to next year. Make sure you guys are following along with the link in the show notes so you can keep up with what we're going to be covering each and every week. Next week, we're going to be doing the best of December to kind of catch up on all of that before we move into the newer releases for 2025. You can find us on Instagram and Reddit if you want to keep up with all the latest information. Just search Brandon's Face Pod, give us a follow. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Peace.